Destroyed buildings in the middle of the desert. A young man in chains is lying on the ground. What is this place? He thinks to himself. His purple eye opens in surprise. Buddy, don't look at the sky. And don't say that I didn't warn you about the temperature of 140 Fahrenheit and that it rises by several Fahrenheit every minute. Says the system. Looking straight ahead, in front of his eyes is a red window about danger. Oh, is someone frying meat? Oh, you're almost ready. The man starts to get up from the ground. Getting up from the ground at the man burned all the skin on his back from the heat outside. I suggest adding some spices so you will taste even tastier. Look, there's already a crust on the back. The man's sweat drips from his face, his lips are dry from exhaustion of the body. Hey, can you hear me? The system asks the question. But the man thinks about himself without paying attention. How did I end up here? God, can you not think about everything at once? Too much data to analyze. The system is in shock. Time travel. Sitting in the middle of the desert and rubble, the man says. Then the system decides to tease him again and tells him. Why don't you save up some money and buy me a brand new processor and card? The man looks at the rubble and says to himself what is there. The system responds to him that this is a public toilet that is more than 700 years old. It is rare to find a place with a danger rating of 3.5 stars. Although the toilets are no longer working, but the fallen of the average degree of mutation are always welcome guests. The analyzer focuses on some strange mutated animal and gives information about the creature. Information. The fallen of the average degree of mutation. The man thinks to himself. Average degree of mutation, fallen, danger rating. Are there any creatures hiding in this toilet? Looking at the ruins, the system says. Wow, how I like that road. There is not a single source of water for 100 kilometers, you will already fall off from dehydration halfway through. An updated version of the famous trisomy, and you have no right to refuse. A vulture flaps its wings near the skeleton's skull. And in that direction there is a jackpot at all. Two fallen ones are hiding just 1600 meters away from us. Looking the other way at the ruins, the system also continues to load our hero with information. You can try using the legendary tackle. Here they will be glad of a sudden dinner. Getting up from the ground and looking around, the man thought that if he gets information about everything that his gaze falls on, some kind of time-traveling blessing? Since these three directions are too dangerous, it remains only. Not having finished speaking and looking in the other direction of the desert, the system interrupts him and says. Bingo. That's right, there is water there. As they say, if there is only one short answer among the three, choose it. The man did not pay attention to the interference in the form of a system that loaded him with huge information. Trying to get up, he leaned on his right hand. From the heat in this desert, his hand began to smoke. Standing up from the ground and looking down, the system begged to pay attention to it. The situation is as follows. 5 girls are injured and can no longer use traditional skills. The man didn't care what the system said at all, he had a problem with much more conversations. He noticed handcuffs on his hands and was surprised. What? Handcuffs? Have I become a criminal in this life? Looking at the handcuffs and the digital inscription on them, the system began to speak. But this thing looks weird. At first glance, these are handcuffs. But in fact, people have long ceased to believe in it because the aristocrats of the 4th floor turned handcuffs into a means to spy on slaves. The man looked straight ahead and walked. Behind him was a broken stop sign. But it's better not to try to take them off, now you need to find shelter, otherwise you'll just burn under the sun. The system spoke. The man was thinking to himself. Surveillance, it seems to me that I have fallen into a very strange world. There is also an emergency situation. A person can hold out for an hour at a temperature of almost 160 degrees Fahrenheit and 49 minutes at a temperature of almost 180 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't have much time, so I can only hope that there really is a water source on the road. That's just it. Here the man stopped and thought. Looking up with a strained gaze, he said. Surveillance. He stood all alone in the middle of a deserted road and looked up. At that moment, the aristocrats were sitting in a huge hall, and just at that moment our main character was being broadcast on a huge screen. A group of men started asking questions. And one of them said. Hey, what kind of deception is this? Why is he still alive? He has lasted for more than 10 minutes. A man in white glasses with rhinestones in a fur coat stood dissatisfied. There was a girl behind him and pointed her finger towards the screen. Did he really walk through the blue door? She was talking. The girl with the pipe was standing on the top floor in a masquerade mask. She was also wearing a fur coat and she had pink hair. Aren't the blue zones the hottest? Why does he look so cheerful? The man with the green masquerade mask started screaming. I want to see how the fallen will eat people. Where are all the monsters? Looking at the screen where our main character was, he continued to scream. Surely the presenter couldn't have shoved a gifted person pretending to be a slave here? Damn, he seems absolutely calm. The man continued his way along the deserted road as if nothing had happened. 2996, 2997. He counted his every step. And he was talking to himself. The tower, people live in the tower. It is dangerous outside of it, and it is simply impossible to survive. 2998. Think. The man closed his eyes and plunged into darkness. In the dark, all the information he had received a few minutes earlier began to fly around him. No one has lived here for 700 years. The temperature is 140 degrees. A surveillance device. Tower. The average degree of mutation. Unfavorable environment. The aristocracy of the fourth floor. After these memories, he continued to think. Fallen monsters outside the tower. To know from the fourth floor, the tower has a clear hierarchy, and the higher the level, the higher the status. 2999. Shackles, keep a record of how people survive outside the tower. Looking at the inscriptions, the man finally came to one general conclusion. So this is a gamble for survival. His shoes start sticking to the asphalt and he says. Ha. Interesting. 3000 seconds, 50 minutes, the temperature seems to have risen to 158 degrees Fahrenheit. Our hero has already reached some more or less residential area. I need to find some shade within a quarter of an hour, otherwise my efficiency will decrease significantly. Turning to the right, he saw something. There was a hydrant in the middle of the road with water coming out of it. Oh, yes. Half of the honors for finding water should be awarded to the voiceover. What would you do without my instructions? The rules of survival outside the tower are simply outrageous. At this temperature they could put more points with water. The system spoke. Approaching the hydrant, the man moistened his hands and happily thought to himself. Great, it works. Walking away from the hydrant, he was surprised that it was almost 160 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and the water here is just icy. The system told him. This means that the water under the ground has not had time to heat up yet. Walking along the road, he reasoned in his head. In that case, I could go down to the sewer. The temperature should be lower there. Looking at the abandoned buildings, he continued. And since there is a water supply here, then the entrance must be somewhere nearby. Peering around the corner, he was sadly looking at something ahead of him. There was a broken manhole in front of him, the system told him. Great. You have found a favorite haunt of mice and cockroaches. You can no longer fry under the scorching sun. Opening the hatch with his right foot, the man continued to talk to himself. However, this is still only a temporary measure. No matter how lucky I am, I won't be able to last long in such conditions. Looking at the open manhole from top to bottom, the system told him, only go ahead. Continuing not to pay attention to the system, the man continued to think in his head. The only option to exit the game is to find a way to return to the tower. The system started taunting him again for his thoughts and said. Exactly. So what's so funny? Since they're betting on me. The man had a small grin on his face. The system did not mention whether the handcuffs could transmit sound, besides I do not know what language is spoken here. Pulling his hands up, he continued with a smile on his face. I have to be a good boy in the new world. The system interrupted him by saying. Hey, you're not. But before he could finish, the guy interrupted the system and said. I want to show that I'm not going to play by their rules. Showing offensive gestures to the camera. The system was shocked by his behavior. Oh my god, she said. And the guy with a smile from ear to ear and standing in handcuffs told them. Get it. His face was visible to all the aristocrats in the tower on the huge TV. People started to get indignant about him. What an arrogant slave. Is he definitely not gifted? A man in a black suit, throwing out a glass of wine, began to shout in discontent. He's just an actor. It's all stage. On the floor below in the lobby, people were still discussing our main character and his act. Ha, and it's even funny. I didn't think my bet could play. But this kid has lived for quite a long time. Ha. Someone started talking on the girl's phone. We guarantee his death. The product is absolutely definitely from the beggars of the lower floor. He definitely has no talents. The girl tensed and answered in a serious, superior voice. I hope I don't have to tell you what to do. Previous life. I was sitting on my ass against the wall while a group of gopniks shouted. Holy shit. Why? Why didn't he even blink an eye? Does he really not feel pain? They looked at me with disgusting faces, and one of them had a brick in his hands. Demon. Simply. An insensitive demon. They kept talking while I looked at them from under my forehead. For some reason, I am different from other people. I stood at my father's grave while they whispered behind my back. Is he the old man's son? TC. The father died, and he didn't shed a tear. Is he a person at all? Yes, even a dog has more feelings than he does. My name is Bai W. I work in the administrative department. Police Special Forces. Passing by the policeman's office, I heard. Have you heard that a serial murder case that had no leads for 10 years was solved in a week? Yes, this guy is really good at catching scumbags. Well, of course, only a freak can understand a freak. Ha 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 ha. They discussed me, but I didn't care. There were no emotions on my face. Until that day. A group of policemen surrounded the bandit and shouted. Drop your weapons, put your hands behind your head. The bandit also held a gun in his hands and also shouted. Get out of the way. A shot followed. Which hit right into me. A bullet pierced my heart. My eyes widened. At the moment of the shot, the police grabbed the bandit and began to knock him to the ground. I was already lying in a puddle of water from the rain, which did not end, and also in a puddle of my blood. Our time. I was sitting in the sewer, looking at the water. In the water I saw the reflection of my face from a previous life. Now I look completely different. Literally in the next second I saw my true face. Haha. The face of a slave on the first floor of the tower deserves 9 points out of 10. The system was mocking. Unfair. Very unfair. I want to fence with you. She was talking. Not interested. I replied dismissively. Since you're gambling, you're supposed to be in control, right? I asked and got an answer from the system. Then I suggest you raise your hands and surrender to save your life, don't disgrace yourself. Suddenly I heard footsteps. There is a guest coming, you need to receive him properly. The system didn't let up. Hey. Are you going to walk on a knife's edge again? It's time to pack your bags and look for another house. I have a question. Suddenly I said, starting to walk forward. Will pretending to be afraid count? I turned to the system. I'm just someone who's a little worried, why are you putting me in a predicament? I was getting closer and closer to the corner of the wall where the footsteps were coming from. A bloodthirsty smile appeared on my face. Come. I thought. Well, let's see. The system was also interested. Around the corner was a knight in light armor and a blue cloak. Wow. 755 talent level, steel general, accompanying force of the 4th stage of the 2nd level. The strength of this guy. Perhaps he is from the elite, with abilities comparable to General Pan Feng. The system gave me the information, and the knight has already looked out from around the corner. It's obvious that he will easily unscrew your head. She stated the fact, and when the knight looked around the corner, he saw no one. I do not think so. It was in my head. Judging by the sound, I'm 10 meters away from him. But the sewers are winding and he can't get close, so it won't be easy to kill me. I tried to convince the system. Whatever, you're going to die soon anyway. She tried to explain to me. Oh, a little reminder, this man is very distrustful, with the old customs of cow. She said. Hello, friend, you've finally come. My voice sounded, which attracted the knight's attention. He turned around, but he didn't see anyone behind him, and I continued. And this is the speed of a person with level 2 strength and the talent of a steel general? Are you using Indian time? The knight suddenly moved at a tremendous speed. Don't be so surprised. Are you curious how I know about your abilities? I asked. The knight stopped, apparently he became interested. You don't seriously think that some slave from the lower floor can last that long here, do you? Or do you really think this is a routine murder mission? I kept asking, and the knight took out a knife on his hand. Ha, you're all innocents. I laughed. The knight turned around and started walking somewhere. Oh, wait. It's going to be a lot of fun in the gambling house right now. A lot of people want me to die, so the boss sent you to deal with me, but are you sure that's not part of their plan? An insignificant slave who was supposed to die outside the tower, but not only did he not die, he also mocked everyone, a good effect from this show, isn't it? Meanwhile, the boss sent you, poor thing, to kill me, everyone is just waiting for you to tear me apart. Suddenly the knight's eyes widened, but I continued. But you know what? In a real scenario, you won't tear me apart, but will stay here forever. Finally finished, I appeared around the corner. I put my hands up and started talking again. Well, I will step on your corpse and continue to mock these aristocrats. I pointed my finger up. At this time, the dealer will start a new game, and the players will become even crazier. So, are you ready to accept the last gift? And while I was asking this, a monster with a bunch of eyes appeared above us. The monster opened its mouth and began to drip saliva. The next moment I put my finger down. And at the same second, the monster flew forward. He flew past me that even my clothes started to develop in the wind. The monster wrapped its mouth around the knight that he didn't even have time to react. A drop of blood got on my face, but there were no emotions. Stop. Stop. Ah. The knight shouted, but he no longer had a chance. Wonderful, my big boy. The system said as I watched the monster drag the knight into the water. Oh, it's a pity, there was clean water here. I looked down and saw that the water had turned red. Hey. I don't recommend thanking him personally. The system spoke. At this distance, you will attract this fallen, showing just a drop of negative emotions. She continued. Besides, you wanted to kill that guy lying in the water. Listening to what the system tells me, I answered. Forget it, I'm a positive boy, I can't cause negative emotions. Well, that's fine. His body has not cooled down yet, feel something, positive emotions will immediately appear. I took an incomprehensible object in my hand and began to examine it. Wow, it's black. Golden legend. The system was surprised. This is the return device that you wanted so much, just twist it, and you will get to wherever you want. The system informed me. I immediately started doing this and the system continued. The area has been explored by 4.5%. There are 35 fallen, fragments of the Doomsday puzzle have not yet been received. My assessment. Worked carelessly. But a beginner can survive only if he passes the level. The handcuffs from my hands fell into the water. I recommend that you forget about the rest for now and get out of here as soon as possible. Suddenly, the light from the device began to envelop me and I thought. Exploration of the area. The Doomsday puzzle. I hope it will be more interesting in the tower. Suddenly I disappeared from my seat in a flash of yellow. Name of Bai Wu. There are two men sitting in the Foreign Intelligence Corps. One of them wipes the weapon. The second one is just sitting by the table, he looks at the person who came to them. Age, approximately 18-19 years old, male. That's it. The man, wiping his sword, frowned at the small amount of information and asked again. All. The Foreign Intelligence Corps captain of the 7th Division is Gu Qinyu. The nickname of Wuju. The man starts laughing very loudly at the whole building. Ha. Wuju, your team's interrogation level has plummeted. This man was with the captain of Unit 13, Lu Mu. Is it because you spent too much time outside the tower and they took advantage of your absence? Take the trouble to explain. Asked Wuju a question. Captain, it's useless to intimidate him or lure him with something. He can safely point out the shortcomings of our interrogation methods. As a result, my team members became the ones who were interrogated. Lu Mu starts screaming again. Is this possible? Who the hell did you catch? Wuju opening some kind of jar. What did he ask? Pouring some liquid on his sword, the man with the sheet continued to report. Well, it's a little weird. He asked how many floors there were in the tower. How the fallen appear, about the accompanying strength and talents. He asked about what even a 3-year-old child knows. I don't know if he's pretending or really stupid. Listening to the information, Wuju silently wiped his sword. He also asked me for a talent chart. Precisely. Lu Mu abruptly shouted out and with a smile on his face, began to shout further. Ha! And this is a pretty interesting kid. There are not enough people in the 13th Division. Why don't you give it to me? Having finished with the sword, Wuju took the sword in his hands and put it in front of him. Do you want to recruit him? Then you're definitely firing a cannon at sparrows. You seem to like this guy. Lu Mu asked a rhetorical question with a smile on his face. Wuju continued. 5 months ago, our team received a message about usury. The man reported that a poor man who owed him money was missing. Later, when I took up this case, I discovered that the number of missing persons turned out to be much larger. Lu Mu asked thoughtfully. Isn't internal affairs the concern of the Straitjacket Corps? Why did you interfere? Why do these noble soldiers care about the fate of people of the lower class? Wuju looking at the sword began to speak. They consider only someone from the 3rd floor and above to be the owner. I followed the evidence and found a gambling house. Lu Mu says. A gambling house. It seems that the nobles are bored and they decided to arrange the Hunger Games? Yes. The dealer of this gambling house, from the fourth floor, they decided to put people in the blue zone. The blue zone, they're crazy. The white zone no longer excites them. Lu Mu was furious at the information he heard. Wu Yu continued. Extreme temperature and high level of danger in the blue zone brings them more fun. But their calculations were violated by one guy. This survivor lived for almost 2 hours and did not attract a single fallen. Moreover, an assassin was sent to deal with him, but in the end he was killed himself. Then I received an anonymous call. The caller was a woman, judging by her voice, quite young. Listening to this, all Lu Mu was at a loss and started talking. Since this is an adventure of the nobles, why isn't the Straitjacket Corps doing this? The fourth floor has never had warm feelings for our intelligence corps. Wu Yu replied with a serious look. I couldn't figure that out either. Her main goal is to get around the dealer. And save Bai Wu. Then Lu Mu pressed his fist to his chest, smiling replied. So the survivor is Bai Wu. Interesting. Looking to the side, Wu Yu asked a question. Lu Mu, are you good at interrogation? Why wouldn't the captain of Unit 13 personally participate? Getting up from the sofa, Lu Mu began to laugh. Ha. I think so too. Show me what kind of immortal it is. Wu Yu looked with a tense look and putting away his sword said. He's a great weapon. We need to keep a good eye on him. 700 years ago, the end of the world came. The world has changed, it has become too harsh. Monsters began to appear continuously, which are called fallen. Humanity is facing a threat to its existence. At this time, a tall tower appeared before the eyes of mankind. No one knows how it appeared and why it was built. But only inside the tower could people live and hope for the future. After a while, people discovered in themselves the power with which they could resist the fallen. Concomitant power. An interrogation room. The so-called collateral force significantly improves a person's physical fitness, speed and other basic abilities. If you want to increase the level of concomitant power, you do not need to train hard, but get out of the tower. The longer you stay outside the tower, the higher the level of the accompanying power. In short, outside the tower you can become stronger. Not just people. But objects outside the tower can change in a similar way. Over time they become what we call Jilin. In addition, if the accompanying power is basic combat abilities such as strength and speed, and talent is a powerful superpower. According to current statistics, there are a total of 1024 talents. The higher the talent, the rarer it is and the stronger it is. Unfortunately, most people have it within limits. 1,700. I'm tapping on the board, he said. Therefore, many people with talents above 500 are attracted to the Army Corps. Such people become the main trump card of each corps. Pointing with her hand, the girl says. Yes. She is our best trump card. His most important achievement is to survive alone for 24 days in the blue zone outside the tower. Even the members of the tower's Straitjacket Corps, who used to turn up their noses, ask him to join them. The man handing the glass began to speak. By the way, I forgot to tell you. The Straitjacket building of the tower and the external intelligence building are structures approved by the ruling layer of the 5th floor. The Straitjacket Corps consists of the children of aristocrats who always look at us, civilians, from high. Since it is much more dangerous outside the tower, people often refer to the intelligence corps as the refugee corps. The man listened and drank water from a glass. That's how. It turns out that this world encourages people to go beyond the tower. Then the man answers him. Hey, what are you saying? The survival rate outside the tower is so low that most people would prefer to stay in the tower all the time. Concomitant strength, Jilin, talent. All this can be obtained only by leaving. The longer you stay outside the tower, the higher your accompanying strength and talent, the effectiveness of items also increases. If Wu Yu survived 24 days in a row, then his strength. The man did not have time to finish, the girl interrupted him with a sharp cry. Yes. Has reached a terrifying level 8. As soon as he meets the fallen, he instantly destroys it. Abruptly runs into Lu Mu's room. Yo guys. The man wondered. Hey, Captain? Why are you here? You guys go get a drink. Pointing to the exit, the captain said. I have a conversation with this kid. The man looked at the captain in bewilderment with a small smile on his face and a glass in his hand. Then take your time. Okay, let's get started. Let's get right to the point, boy. The commander did not have time to finish and was interrupted. I'm ready to join you. The captain was in shock. How are you? The captain muttered to himself. Drinking his water, the man with white hair answered him. But I'm not going to join your team, I want to stay here. After all, I am already well acquainted with 2 people from this team. The captain started shouting. Wait. How do you know that we are? The man interrupted him again. Putting the glass on the table, the face of the dazed captain could be seen in the reflection. Interrogation. It means that you don't know anything about me. You didn't get rid of me, which means you and the one who threw me out of the tower are not at the same time. If it's not the enemy, then after the interrogation and all my antics, the Foreign Intelligence Corps will want to recruit me. But judging by Yun Shu's reaction, she was very surprised by your appearance. The man recalled the situation with the girl and the captain. Captain? She asked. Hi. He replied. So, your arrival is not within the norm. Apparently, you're not the captain of their unit. Besides, if I'm not mistaken, your shield is broken. Jilin can also be damaged. It looks like the fallen ones you've fought are stronger than the ones I've met. The captain became more serious and asked. How did you know I was using a shield? You have a scar 3 centimeters lower from the wrist. The man answered. Only by this scar did you determine? The captain asked the question. The man continued. Since you are the captain of the Foreign Intelligence Corps unit, the level of the accompanying force cannot be low, the recovery abilities will be the same. It will be difficult for people to leave such a scar on their hand inside the tower, and there is nothing for it. Normal people have raised wrists, but you have sunken ones. The point of application of force for the use of the shield is the wrist joint. Therefore, people who use the shield for a long time, deformation occurs. And there were also scratches on the shield, indicating that it was damaged. Breaking the Jilin is not something that ordinary fallen ones can do. Wait, I am. Sweat trickled down the captain's face, and he opened his sweat in surprise, wondering why he had come here at all. And yet, the white-haired man was looking at his hand. When I raised my hand to protect my face, I was hit with claws 3 centimeters below the wrist. The captain clenched his fist and smiled at what he heard. Heck. He's a real talent, he thought to himself. We need to find a way to lure to your unit. The man remembered about the piece of paper that was given to him. By the way, in the talent table that I was given, there are only those below 700. I need a full one. If you help me get it. Pointing a finger at the captain, the man spoke. Maybe I can. Turning over the sheets, he pointed to one of them. The next moment, the captain runs out of the interrogation room, knocking down a girl with documents on the way. And screams. Talent. I have to bring him this chart. Suddenly the captain came back to my room, putting some papers on the table. He was breathing very hard and could not utter a word at first. His hair and clothes were disheveled, and sweat was running down his face. Finally, after catching his breath a little, he began to chatter. You don't seem to know much about the tower. He told me and I just answered. I lost my memory. He immediately widened his eyes, looking at me. Lost your memory? He asked himself in his head and continued. Judging from what you said earlier, it can't be true. You definitely could have found a more suitable reason. Picking up the notebook, I began to speak. Yeah, so you better believe it. To avoid bad consequences, my kidnappers may have used some means to forcibly erase my memory. Yeah. The captain agreed, finally sitting down on the chair in front of me. Let me first say that of all the 3 lower floors, Wuju has the highest talent. Talent 256. Ultimate Shadow. For a long time there are no those who have a higher level. I have an interesting question for his explanation. What about the top 100? Were there any? The captain thought about it. Well, look, Talon 76. Absolute Dissolution. They say that more than 20 years ago, the miner awakened his talent. It's not like winning the lottery, it's literally going straight to heaven. I looked up at the captain. Yeah. I think the guy had a bad time. The man immediately raised his finger up and tried to bring me up to speed. Well, he just disappeared. We assume that he was taken by an organization from the upper floors. Maybe it was the 5th floor, where the government is located, or 6. However, this case was not investigated. Instead, they tried to erase the information about the person. I was looking through a notebook with talents and noticed one of them. Talent 24. The Eye of Prey. Through a focused look, you can get information about the character corresponding to the hidden side of your personality. Additionally, unknown. I immediately started thinking. Prey's Eye, Talent 24. Pretty high. Great news. It must have something to do with important information. I've just come into this world and haven't learned much yet. But what about the hidden side of my personality? Is it priced cheaply? Why does this body have such high skills? Has it been outside the tower for a long time? Only, my accompanying force is weak, so this body was outside for the first time after all. It seems my body has a lot of secrets. By the way. Finally, I began to speak out loud, asking the captain. Can someone force you to measure talent? No. He answered easily and began to explain. All talents are individual. As, for example, in the intelligence core, the talents of many people are hidden and never manifest. AI was surprised, continuing to inspect the talents. This is good news. I exclaimed in my head. One more question. A person can have only one talent? Putting down the notebook, I asked. The captain grinned and began to answer. You can only wake up one. But on the 6th floor, they say that you can get additional talents by killing some strong fallen ones, but these fallen ones. Even if there are such creatures, it is better not to meet them. Right. I answered in one word and plunged back into my thoughts. Praise I is not suitable for combat. Although it is possible to discover talent, but it may not be suitable for combat. I have to find a way to get out of the tower and find another talent. The captain suddenly coughed and got up from his chair. Coming up to me, he started talking. Brother, I got a chart for you. How about a deal? With the most stupid face he asked. I took the notebook in my hand and slapped it on his belly. I'm sorry, brother. You're a good person. But I choose the 7th division. The captain suddenly screamed. AI, what? Why? I just got to my feet and started walking out, calmly speaking. During the last 3 hours of interrogation, I learned that the 7th division out of all 24 most often went outside the tower. The captain was angry, but restrained his anger. In any case, he began to speak in a raised tone. Isn't it the most compelling reason not to join them? Moreover, if you want to get out of the tower, then I will transfer you to the vanguard of Unit 13. If you don't want to go out, then join the interrogation squad. Just ask. I exhaled and pretended to think. Then he asked a question. Brother, you're still not married, right? My question made the captain cry. Do you know that too? He asked with resignation. Remember, you need to choose the one who initially likes you. Don't waste your time. Before the exit itself, I began to explain and continued. You lost because you were late. Since the first impression on me was made by the 7th division, they are closer to me. And also. More? Already completely hopeless, the captain asked, repeating my last word. The number 13 is unlucky. I finished and went out the door. And this proposal finally killed the captain. What? He shouted in the room, and I was already standing in the corridor, where a girl and a guy were waving their hands at me. The next moment I was already in the elevator. You turned to me while we were going down. We found out from your fingerprint that you didn't have an ID card before. But since you joined our unit, you have become at least a citizen of the lower floor. In addition, we have found you a place in the southwestern part of the lower floor. Of course, you will have to pay the rent yourself, 400 TAs per month. I suddenly noticed this guy who was saying all these words. Suddenly, the system started talking. You know, during the game, you often meet a strong NPC at the very beginning. This dwarf meter with a cap, it seems, is such a character. But. The system's voice stopped as this guy turned in my direction to say something. Yes, I forgot to introduce myself, my name is Gu Kinju. You can call me Captain Gu. He finished and the system continued. But he is hiding something that interests even people from the 6th floor. Alright, Wuju. I distorted his name, which caused other people from our unit to fall into a precipitate, and the captain himself looked at me angrily. After which, he looked at the other two and began to exude murderous intent. I have a request. Suddenly I said, holding up my finger. Before I asked the question, the captain tried to get ahead of me with his answer. If you don't want to go outside the tower, then join the interrogation group. There have been a lot of cases lately. But he didn't guess, because I said a completely different thing. I want to leave the tower tomorrow. And these words caused a slight shock to everyone. What? 2 other people from our group exclaimed. Finally, the captain turned back to the elevator door and said. We've tested your accompanying strength. Since you were in the blue zone, it took less than 2 hours for it to increase from level 1 to level 3. But at this level, even if you meet a weak fallen. I wasn't interested in what he was saying, so I decided to interrupt. If you want to remind me that it's dangerous there and I can't go out, then there's no need. Just let me go accompanied by an experienced partner, I won't interfere. I'm not looking for death. And I don't think you want me to stay in the tower either. Right? I asked with some treachery. The man showed no emotion on his face at all. Good. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'll lead a group of 4 people, plus you, we get a squad of 6 people. We're going to the white zone. He said. By the way, what is in the blue zone? After his story, I asked what once again made everyone surprised. He really doesn't know anything. Thought the man and woman standing behind me. Suddenly, the elevator opened and the captain made a half turn. Prophets. He said calmly. This is where you will live. He continued when we had already left the elevator and found ourselves in a city that looked like cyberpunk. Everywhere, on the buildings, there was advertising, everything was illuminated with neon colors, and at first glance, it seemed as if it would be nice to live here. The area under the first floor of the tower, Jianlu Port. A crowded place with thousands of bright banners with all kinds of advertisements for a particular product. Bai Wu, sorry to keep you waiting, Captain Wu Ju went to settle some formalities. A brunette with disheveled hair and with a bag over his shoulder at the ready was coming down the stairs, approaching me. First we'll take you to where you're going to live now, and at the same time we'll take a walk. The newly arrived companion continued his speech. Your things have already been taken there. He opened a bag and began to take out of it a similar blue jacket. But we still brought clothes, here, put them on. I accepted the new thing, starting to put it on right away, and the guy who just took it out continued his speech. If you like something on the way, we can buy it. Would you gave you some money, it's in the bag. The street ahead is called Jianlu Port, you can buy anything here. My guide did not stop talking. But don't trust the merchants who will try to sell you Jilin. My companion chirped right there. Jilin for 17 hours. A voice immediately exclaimed at full volume from the digital screen above our heads. I think everyone understands what it means to stay 17 hours outside the tower. A guy appeared on the screen with a shovel in his arms and continued his monologue. You can buy this shovel, it has divine power. Wow. How much did it cost to place such an advertisement? The voice in my head was surprised. But the monologue of admiration from the guy in the screen did not dare to end. Just imagine, you have only dug, but you have already dug up so much that others cannot do in a month. If I hadn't joined the intelligence corps, I would definitely have kept it for myself. Now I can only throw it away or sell it to some lucky guy. What? I was taken aback by what I heard right there, a voice that only I could hear. Does the intelligence corps supply the goods? He was puzzled. It would be better to put the girl. This one can't even play. When his gaze immediately turned in our direction, the voice immediately began to indignantly parry the bulging eyes of the young man. Don't look. Don't look. Please avert your eyes. 998 tans, you won't regret it. If you buy now, you will get a discount of 300 tans. The advertisement from the screen exclaimed again. What's happening? There are no such people in our corps. I was distracted from the exclamation in my head and the voice of the advertisement by my companion, who was obviously very outraged by what was happening. Why there are still people who pretend to be us. We cannot allow him to tarnish the name of our corps. Let's go. We'll report to the captain and he'll sort it out. Waving her arms furiously and shouting out louder indignation, the girl hastened her pace. Yun Shu. Only her friend called after her. Calm down. We need more. He was about to say something else to calm her angry fervor, but I interrupted him. Go with her. In response, he just said. But once again I didn't let him say it to the end. You can't let her do whatever she wants, can you? He obviously understood me and immediately settled down, keeping all the other words to himself, as if he remembered something bad. Bai Wu, then you'll get there yourself. He shouted and threw his bag to me, immediately taking off after the girl. The money is in the bag. While. Yeah. I came to a tall building with a burning inscription of large yellow sizes. Wow, did you find something interesting? A voice immediately appeared in my head. Half an hour later. Here is the door of my new residence. One click on the door handle and I got a view of my mansion. Not a lot, however, a wardrobe, a chest of drawers, a computer chair, a table. Inside is the basic equipment of the members of the intelligence corps, carefully study. Gu Kinju. So read the message on a piece of paper on top of the suitcase. Vi. How attentive Wuju is at work. A voice in my head immediately exclaimed. As soon as I opened the suitcase, I saw another piece of paper with the text. A memo? The voice was immediately interested. Let's see what it says. and it fell silent for a while, as if it began to read with me. Beginners are given a watch to detect negative emotions when they go outside the tower. When negative emotions reach the 75 mark, an alarm is triggered. There were 2 sectors in the suitcase. At the bottom of the suitcase, in a recess, there were 3 devices similar to syringes with liquid and a needle the size of a case, exactly the size of a palm. There was just a watch in the door of the suitcase. The memo really indicated this clock, or rather schematically drawn and painted where which button and what it means. The warning icon on the bright blue screen, the scale of emotions, the sun behind the cloud meant the weather, the temperature icon, of course the time, the clock was there too. All members of the Corps must follow the rules. When an alarm is triggered, immediately use the disc for teleportation. Well, a good mechanism for survival outside the tower. A voice in my head stated the fact. I immediately put on my watch, fixing it on my wrist. After all, sometimes people don't know what emotional state they are in, and this mechanism will reduce the number of problems. But this thing is for you. He wouldn't let up. Completely useless. Ha ha ha. The voice gloated. There are 2 digits 0 on the blue screen. But don't worry, there is one more thing in the box that will definitely interest you. 3 syringes with a cloudy white liquid were well fixed in their cell by a wide strip of leather strap. A tranquilizer that suppresses emotions. The voice immediately explained. You can enter it when you are close to the fallen and are about to enter the danger zone. I took one of the syringes and decided to let in 1 drop of liquid. In the light, however, it sometimes shimmers with a blue hue. Your muscles relax and you enter a state of calm for a short time. The effect is about 5 minutes. Sure. After these 5 minutes, your calm state turns into a state of hyperactivity and your negative emotions intensify. Do not use it unless absolutely necessary. How is the emotional spring? First we squeeze it, and after 5 minutes we release it, and an emotional surge occurs. I was interested in the information provided by the voice. Right. Very interesting. This voice immediately exclaimed in response. I didn't think and decide for a long time. It became interesting for me to try out a new acquisition, and I immediately injected myself with one of these syringes into the neck area without even squeaking. A voice immediately exclaimed, almost deafening me. Do you want to experience negative emotions so much? I decided to sit waiting for the effect of this substance, and the clock was ticking all the time in the corner of the room, diluting the silence. Although how to say silence, there is still a voice right there. Oh, Thomas the Unbeliever, I can only wish you good luck. A voice spoke. 5 minutes later. An empty syringe lies on the table, casting glare with the body using the light of a table lamp. Ha ha ha. The voice laughed, enjoying the effect. Well, how? What do you feel? Or are you going to sleep? I raised my hand in the air and turned it in the air. I don't feel anything. I spoke in response to the voice. This is to be expected. The next day. Here they go beyond the tower. A platform in the form of a circle surrounded by illuminated pillars around the perimeter. 6 pillars: white, purple, yellow, gray, red and blue. These stelae have the ability to pass through space. A voice immediately explained to me. In fact, they are used to block those guys at the top of the tower. Stella? The guys at the top of the tower? I immediately repeated in my mind. Yeah, let's stop. The voice sounded again. It's better not to get involved in this, for the sake of our common good, just pretend that you don't know anything. Came. The captain's voice and the sounds of several people's footsteps rang out. These are the recruits who are participating with us today in the exploration outside the tower. Introduce yourself. Wuju spoke. Who wasn't there? In total, 4 people, as he said, not counting me and him. The fact is that they are all higher than the commander. And some even by 2 or 3 heads. There was also a guy on the left, but more comely, with medium-length blue-purple hair and purple eyes, next to the tallest of their company, a guy with chocolate-colored hair gathered in a high ponytail, which was diluted with bright pink pigtails on the sides, followed by a girl with medium-length blue hair and emerald-colored eyes, and at the end of this company, a sullen boy whose scarlet eyes were hidden by a curtain of his slightly short, loose brown hair. However, they surprised me when they appeared behind my back. My name is Wang Shai. The tallest guy of their company started the acquaintance. Brother, do you have Jilin in your bag? God, this guy is really interesting. A voice immediately exclaimed. As they say, if you are a jock, then you have problems with your head. Continued to parry the voice. The son of a rich family, born on the 3rd floor of the tower, He always hunted for fresh blood and danger, so he refused the straitjacket of the tower and joined the intelligence corps. Oh, and one more thing. As a macho man, he naturally loves Barbie dolls. Ha ha ha. He gave out his voice and burst into laughter. Yes, a trifle, I plan to go outside the tower and try my luck. I answered the question of a new acquaintance. Oh, the first time, but how I thought it all out. The guy was surprised. TC, rookie. Don't get in the way. It came from the mouth of a guy with blue-purple hair. I hope you won't die today. This is Lin Uzhu, he always says that, get used to it. Wang Shai decided to introduce us. We don't know each other well, even if you die, I won't grieve. Lin made his decision. Wow. The voice wasn't worth the wait. He immediately exclaimed with his next explanation. He's from the second floor, looks prettier than girls, is toxic and loves dismemberment. I like. A voice exclaimed, almost squealing. Hey, how about trying to subdue him? A voice suggested, which caused my short silence. I can only cling to influential people and not get in the way. And, sis, you look good. Wang Shai spoke and, smiling contentedly, hugged Lin Uzhu tightly. What did you say, little one? A guy who looked like a girl exclaimed with displeasure. Bro, forget it, forget it. Suddenly someone pulled me by the jacket, but turning around I saw a guy whose eyes are not visible because of his hair. Hi. My name is Shang Xiaoyi. The boy mumbled, greatly worried. Another freak. A voice in my head exclaimed, immediately delivering its verdict. At first glance, he looks like a puppy, but in battle he is the craziest among them. Often the first impression is deceptive, but this dwarf will make everyone give way to him. You have to be careful. Hi, I'm Bai W. I decided to introduce myself to him right away and held out my hand in response. But before the new acquaintance could say a word, a girl with blue hair came forward, pushing the poor guy aside. She immediately shook my outstretched hand. Yin Shuang. That's all she said, without taking her serious gaze directed in my direction. My god, a girl has finally appeared, otherwise I would have thought that everyone here is a monk. The voice put in its word again. By the way, she is an Avenger, she, like Shorty, has hidden secrets that the 6th floor is interested in. She is from the 2nd floor and seems to be the most normal in this group. A secret from the people on the 6th floor? Questions immediately popped up in my head. Not the first person, maybe. A rare talent? But her attention to me was not long. Pretty quickly she let go of my hand, abruptly turned around and started walking away. Speaking of a group, shouldn't there be 6 people? I asked the question out loud. Someone else? The two were in high spirits, the guy with hidden eyes immediately fell silent, and the captain generally became sullen. Already dead. The captain said briefly in my ear and slapped me lightly on the shoulder. Think better of yourself. In this group, everyone is a villain. It flashed through my mind right there and I smiled. It's time for the advance team to return. The captain spoke loudly. Get ready, we're going right now. The team is returning. A loud voice rang out. Attention. Be ready to go. A man appeared in front of one of the stalls, squatting and surrounded by a bright light that created a barrier. Confirms the safe return of the preliminary reconnaissance group. 103,788 exploration has been carried out, there are enough energy resources, no fallen have been found. A newly arrived man with a bag overweight was reporting to another. Good. The recorder's response immediately followed. That's it, I immediately thought, the world outside the tower is random, so someone from the intelligence corps should be responsible for the preliminary study of the terrain. Making sure that there are energy mines and few monsters in the area. Only then a team of lower floors is sent to this area for work. The next group. The man who was recording the report shouted. Captain. He exclaimed when he saw who was standing in front of him and going to the next exploration. Captain, try your best. I wish you good luck. The man shouted wishes in the wake. A portal of a pleasant white color opened in front of Wuju. Forward. The captain told his escorts. Follow me. And disappeared into the portal. He was followed by Lin Uzhu, then Wang Shai, Shang Xiaoyi, Yin Shuang, and at the end was me. Watch and tranquilizer, check again. Gave the owl Yin Shuang. Checked. This is a portal. After we log in, a number will be generated. I decided to explain Yin Shuang. The number is entered into the Jiagong grid on the side of the portal, and the number increases horizontally. On the wall, indeed, there were rather big numbers highlighted in the table. You go in first. A new acquaintance spoke, passing ahead. Well, thank you. A 7-digit number. I thought, paying attention to the table with the numbers. 6,912,749 numbers that I got. In other words, during the 700 years of the Tower era, people have already explored millions of areas. I thought about it right there, slowly disappearing under the influence of the portal. I'm looking forward to this journey beyond the tower. We were met by a bright flash of light because of which it was barely possible to open our eyes, we just had to squint. But a moment and the bright warm light of the portal was replaced by the evening time of day. Dark turquoise sky over a huge abandoned building, which is located behind a high fence with a height of 2 people, on top of which a wire with spikes is attached. A kind of prison at a minimum. Here and there climbing plants that have settled in this place fall down the walls. It is difficult to see anything behind the fence grid, but if you look closely, then a sign in the form of a red diamond with a white cross, already warped from time, hangs over the central entrance, so to speak. This? Lin began, peering at the sign with the name of the establishment and trying to read it. A psychiatric hospital? He immediately asked the question aloud, as if doubting what he had read. The 9th psychiatric hospital? A voice in my head immediately became interested. If you don't get into this hospital, it will be difficult to conduct research. But who knows what might be waiting for you there? How many negative emotions can the mentally ill have? This is a hotbed of evil, I don't want you to go there. The voice in my head wouldn't stop, but I just listened to it in silence, measuring the building in front of me with my eyes. But there are secrets inside that only you can solve. Therefore, good luck. The voice exclaimed at the end of his fiery speech. A mystery that only I can solve. I thought about it right there. Does this have something to do with the Doomsday puzzle pieces? This psychiatric hospital has a strange name. With a slice of interest and excitement, Wang Shai gave his voice to the upcoming. Don't you want to come in and see? There are many fallen there. Shang Xiaoyi muttered, trembling and wiping away the beads of perspiration from excitement. I'm a little scared. I noticed this guy's watch. The warning icon is at 0, the scale has not even advanced 1 division. No sooner had I noticed it than the voice immediately laughed. Ha 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 ha. This guy is the drama king. It's obvious that he's calm. What an actor. The voice exclaimed incessantly. The temperature is quite normal, about 46. The captain assured, consulting the watch on his wrist, from which a blue canvas of a medium-sized screen appeared just above. However, the possibility of rapid changes cannot be ruled out. 46 degrees. The voice was puzzled, as it immediately exclaimed with a question. And is this a normal temperature? Hey Bai Wu. They're all crazy here. The voice persisted, indignant and panicking. Yin Shuang looked back at the scenery of this place, while others were moving forward. There is no grass and miners around, we must be near the city. The area is covered with a spreading slightly transparent fog. The receding road from this place is studded with lamp posts on one side and the other, which have been turned off for a long time and are idle. It's like some kind of horror movie. I'm glad that there is no forest from where a maniac will jump out. Only the road and the trees behind. Yin continued her speech. In that case, let's go in and take a look. Wang Shai exclaimed, still smiling contentedly with all his 32 teeth and banging his fist on his palm. There's no other way out, is there? This kind of scene is usually only in the blue zone. Be careful, don't rush. I spoke out loud, moving slowly behind my group. So timid? Lin was immediately indignant, looking back in my direction, and raised his voice continuing. If you're afraid, you can come back. Don't pull us down by attracting the fallen. Good. The captain said, waving his hand to Lin to silence him. I will go. The captain is serious. He touched the fence net and, having led to the edge of the door, grabbed in order to open the way for his subordinates and himself. The door opened quite easily. It can be seen that over time the locking chains began to slowly disintegrate, and the silence was scared off by its creaking. This? I began to inspect the area, glancing at the buildings on the territory where we went. The rhombus of the sign under the cross was divided into 4 more sectors. The letters above the main entrance are already covered with rust and have lost their initial appearance. Here and there, from different ends of the roof and edges, the tangled appendages of some climbing plant hang from each other. There are 4 medical buildings, each with 19 floors. He began to study and explain Wang Shai. It doesn't look like an ordinary hospital. The guy thought. 4 buildings, which one to explore first? I think we can only enter one. I pointed to the building located to my left. With the exception of the first building, the lower floors of the other buildings have no entrance at all. Looking around out of the corner of my eye, I saw only time-stained glass, behind which there are silhouettes like people, most likely some mannequins. Completely blocked. I continued to express my thought. If you want to go to the second building, you need to get to the 19th floor and go through the air corridor. After analyzing the terrain, I came across angular cavities, a kind of air corridors in the form of the letter G, which connected the tops of the buildings, thereby enabling people in the past to move between buildings without going outside. Wow, really? Wang Shai exclaimed as he surveyed the area I had indicated. You're useful. Recognized it for a while by Lin. Why is it so inconvenient? It's a hospital. The brunette with pink pigtails was indignant. Yes, but if something goes against common sense, then there must be a reason for it. I immediately thought about what Wang Shai had noticed. Perhaps the owner does not want anyone to enter the second building. It flashed through my mind right there. Captain. Shang Xiaoyi began, as if he had seen a ghost and was barely conscious. There are 17 evil spirits in this building, I'm afraid. Ha ha ha. The voice in my head laughed as if enjoying it. He continues to play his role. He struggles to suppress his delight. How interesting. Be on your guard. The captain immediately warned. We go into the first building. The captain was the first in the squad. He slowly opened the doors, breaking the silence with its creaking, followed by his comrades. A not very pleasant view of the lobby of the building opened before their eyes. The seats were torn up, standing out of place and stained with dried blood. The walls were decorated with blood in the form of streaks and lines. A rusted barrel from under something small lay on the floor. Sheets of paper with written texts of some information, ultrasound pictures or something similar were scattered on the floor. Special black film. Despite the abandonment of this room and the chaos that lives here, the dim light bulbs in the building in the corridor and hall are still lit. It looks like this hospital has been abandoned for a long time. Summed up what Lin saw. It's a complete mess, everything is neglected. We immediately began to look around inside the building and analyze what we saw. I drew on a kind of burgundy paint on the wall, which was either just smeared or depicted some kind of chaotic pattern. It's blood. I made a verdict in my mind. Looking closer, I saw that all these lines formed into a drawing. He has eyes in the form of 5 pointed forks of lines, ending with an eye at each end. There are a couple of branches just below, as if making a muzzle from the drawing. The sprout itself made its way out of a small circle, with a 5-pointed star inside. A sort of pentagram. The bloodstains are dark red, it looks like they were left recently. I thought and immediately mentally asked a question to a voice that was always screaming or indignant in my head. Do you see something? I asked. Huh? The voice exclaimed and immediately became indignant. I'm not mentally ill. How can I know what this symbol is? This is a psychiatric hospital, and my head is all right, I'm with common sense and a clear mind. Next to my feet were empty notebooks, sheets with some information, and a schematically drawn human body, scissors and many other stationery. However, I can say that these bloodstains were left 2 days ago. A voice spoke. 2 days ago? I thought immediately in my mind. Did someone try to hide it or on the contrary point the way? Think with your little head, I can't help you. The voice snorted, no longer sharing or trying to analyze what happened to me. Captain, there are many rooms here. Wang Shai said as he quickly looked around in space. Are we going to investigate them one by one? The captain was silent at first and then turned to me, turning around. By you. What do you think? Too many rooms, exploring one by one, maybe you can get the necessary information. I chuckled. But the most intimate secret is in the 4th building. I said in conclusion, slightly ahead of the commander. Suddenly Lin wanted to be indignant again and put an obstacle in the form of his hand and leaned against the wall. A little more and you will probably hear the gnashing of his teeth. Hey, new guy. He immediately exclaimed indignantly. What are you talking about? What other hidden secret? Ha, you hurt his tender feelings. A voice that only I can hear does not require waiting at such moments. I'm afraid he doesn't like you. I said, closing my eyes and exhaling. I explain it only once. Next time, just take my word for it. But before I could continue my explanation, Lin began to get indignant again. And? You. But fortunately the captain was with us, so he immediately let me continue. Bai Wu, go on. Wow. The voice was immediately surprised, which you can't get into your pocket for a word. And you know how to take power into your own hands. As I said at the beginning. I decided to continue my explanation. Of the 4 buildings, only the first one has an entrance. If a patient needs help in the 4th building, then he must go from the ground floor to the 19th, go through the 3rd and 2nd buildings and come to the 1st. And finally, from the 19th floor, it will reach the desired floor in the 1st building. During this time, a patient with any disease can already choose his next body for reincarnation. I finally expressed my thoughts aloud, which appeared to me thanks to the analysis of the terrain. The layout of this hospital is really unusual, but… The captain spoke, but immediately stopped. If you think logically, I continued, it looks more like a prison than a hospital. Prison? The people accompanying me were surprised, and I continued to explain. There is only one entrance. Then the prisoner has only one way to escape. Prisoners can be easily monitored. Since this is a prison, the farthest is the 4th building. Wang Shai immediately had a twinkle in his eyes and snapped his fingers. This is the most secret place in the whole hospital, he exclaimed. Captain. Shang Xiaoyi mumbled, pointing somewhere with his finger. There. He muttered and everyone immediately turned around. He was pointing to the elevator doors at the top of which the number 19 and the down arrow were lit on the screen. The elevator went by itself. The boy muttered the same, turning to us. Be on your guard. The captain immediately exclaimed. Get ready for battle. It looks like we won't need to go up the stairs, Shan said, lifting his bangs higher, thereby opening his eyes. Captain. I turned to Wuju. I was always interested in one question. No one has lived outside the tower for 700 years, these cities and hospitals should have been destroyed long ago. But why do some objects still exist? The numbers were decreasing with every passing moment, the elevator was getting closer with every second. And now the number 9 was displayed on the black screen. I'm not sure. I decided to answer Gu Qinyu's question. In some places that we have visited before, objects are activated from time to time, so, for example, in an amusement park, a Ferris wheel can rotate by itself. Rules outside the tower. Strange. The elevator car was getting closer and closer by the second. The corridor of the descent was illuminated by bright red lights. It's not just a space that is changing. Are there still many unsolved mysteries? I thought to myself. It seems that a phenomenon that cannot be explained is treated as a rule here. The number changed to 1, and all the team members immediately prepared for what awaits them behind these metal doors. Even Shan tucked his hair under the rim in anticipation of what awaited them, and the captain put his hand on the hilt of his sword. The situation in the lobby was heating up. And now, counting down second by second, the elevator arrival bell finally rang, and the doors began to slowly open, releasing a scarlet light from the cabin. A burgundy-colored eye, as if bloodshot, with an emerald iris, looked at them. From the crack of the opening doors, hands looked out, clasping the door plates, as if trying to help them open. Pale pink skin, scarlet sharp nails, scarlet flesh with large drops, and trickles of scarlet liquid oozing. Ooh. The monster stretched out. And so, when the doors opened completely, there was a monster in front of us in a pajama shirt with white and naked stripes. The head was divided into 2 parts with pale pink flesh, similar to the cap of this monster, under which, in the form of a column, there was ribbed flesh passing from red to white. There was a vessel sticking out in his chest, which seemed to have been cut off, and now blood is oozing out of it and does not stop. SHHH. He published again. SHHH. The monster made a sound again and swung a clawed paw towards the captain. Back. Would you only manage to shout? It was only during the movement that it became clear that this was not a gap in his flesh, but a deformed mouth. The monster had an elongated proboscis instead of a mouth, like a mosquito, from the hole of which scarlet drops of blood fell. The captain tightened his grip on the hilt of the sword and, freeing it from the scabbard, immediately slashed at the neck of the monster with a scarlet blade. The monster was in front of him. A terrible monster in pajamas made of white and blue stripes with metal shackles on its hind legs with a clawed hand outstretched forward, lost its head and trunk for its food in a second. The head landed immediately with a slurp on the floor in front of my feet, leaving a bloody liquid spreading in all directions. The fallen must die. The Jilin level is 19D. The voice of the system immediately sounded in my head. At the moment of touching the fallen, it reduces his defense and increases the chance of hitting his weak spot. The metal blade with the black handle and the red stripe of the mark on it was now decorated with the scarlet blood of the monster and exuded a scarlet aura. Of course, its effectiveness also depends on the owner. In a battle with the fallen of the average mutation level, everything depends on the skill of the swordsman. The voice concluded. The captain immediately sheathed his weapon, and the monster's body, like a sack of potatoes, fell lifelessly to the floor. "Do not be afraid of the fallen of the second level of mutation," Wuju said. "We go to the 19th floor." The captain gave the order to his subordinates. His weapon had been outside the tower for 19 days. Thoughts were swarming in my head. I heard that his record of staying outside is 24 days. So it became Jilin on the 5th day. Why I feel so bad. Shang Xiaoyi muttered to himself. "Come on, it's Captain Gu." Wang Shai comforted him and grinned at the guy. While everyone immediately moved briskly after the commander-in-chief, I decided to examine the corpse of the so-called fallen second-level mutation. "Hey. What are you doing? Faster." Lin exclaimed as he and his partners entered the scarlet mouth of the elevator. But I just kept silent in response, not taking my eyes off the severed head and probing it. The skin is dry and cracked. Thoughts began to seethe in my head as I turned the body over, examining and analyzing it by touch. His mouth changed and became like the mouth of a mosquito. I looked at his once former arms and legs while continuing to study them carefully. The limbs are whole, although they have changed shape, they look like claws. Yes, the concept of the fallen of the second level of mutation, roughly speaking, is that they are a bit like a person. The voice of the system spoke in my head, watching what was happening. I lifted the body by the clothes and decided to open the surface of his skin a little more in order to study it a little more. "Hey. Hey." The system immediately screamed, indignant in response to my actions. "Why are you undressing him? The fallen, of course, have no human rights, but isn't that too much?" And the voice of the system was surprised by what I saw while I continued to study. "It seems," he muttered. "Have some useless things regressed too? Ha 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 ha." A voice laughed loudly, and I fished a folded piece of paper out of the pocket of my blood-soaked pajamas. "Bingo. You found a great thing." The system, which only I can hear, did not stop. "This?" I thought and unfolded the found leaf, splattered with the same drops of blood. "A diary?" I was surprised mentally, running my eyes over the written lines. "I don't have depression. I just owe a lot of money. He said if I came here, no one would find me." The opening lines of the written text read. "But he deceived me. He tricked me. Deceived me. I try to find a way down every day. The girl on the 11th floor is a very poor thing. Will I become the same? Will she be transferred to the second building? I just want to leave." There are tears and creases in the corners, which most likely were left by the patient, hurriedly trying to hide this page when the diary was taken away. I immediately thought, appreciating the integrity of the message. And my gaze slid over the inscription with the numbers of the date written, and it puzzled me no less. 05.07.2026, read the inscription. 2026th year. I thought again. It is now the 704th year of the Tower era. How much time has passed? TC, who knows? The voice of the system clicked in my head, breaking the silence. Many objects in this world, like this sheet from the diary, have not been destroyed in 700 years. Is it somehow connected with the tower or is there some kind of protection? I thought, hanging my gaze on the same piece of paper. "Dung Beetle, are you coming or not?" The silence was broken by the exclamation of Lin, who endured my slowness with the last of his strength. "Everyone is waiting only for you." "I'm here," I said and finally got into the elevator. We go to the 11th floor. The captain at first remained silent in response to what he heard, but then immediately asked, "What did you find?" "A small piece. Pieces of paper," I said and showed the piece of paper that I found in the monster's clothes. "The level of danger of subsequent buildings may exceed your expectations. There are stronger fallen hiding on the 11th floor, with whom you can fight to warm up." I pressed a button with the number 11, and it immediately lit up red. "And at the same time look for useful information." I didn't have to wait long. As soon as I finished my sentence, Lin immediately became indignant, raising the tone of his voice higher. "Hey. Why on earth are you deciding everything here? This is just a white zone, where strong fallen ones can come from here. If you don't go to the hospital." My answer followed, which angered the interlocutor even more. "Then there will be no danger. But inside, Sister Lin, I advise you to be careful. Bai Wu, you're small." Lin only managed to exclaim, gritting his teeth in indignation. But his speech was interrupted by a chuckle from someone else. "Hee hee. Or maybe something extraneous." Silence immediately reigned in the elevator booth, and at the same moment we exchanged glances with each other from those present. "You. Did you hear that?" Flushed and smiling stupidly, Shan muttered. That sound. Attention, we have arrived. The captain rapped out. And 2 sticks of the number 11 immediately appeared on the scoreboard. We crossed the threshold one by one, leaving the elevator, and again we heard that mocking laugh. The corridor was empty. Not a single soul. Only the light bulbs burned dimly and the red spot of the lamp over the 2 doors in front of us. You came to play with me. A slightly squeaky voice was heard here and there, as if bouncing off the surface of the walls. I'm here. We walked in an almost even formation, looking around so as not to miss the source of this shrill voice. Won't you look for me? The resident of the floor did not let up, throwing phrases and questions all the time. I've been waiting for you for so long. We were getting closer to the door with the red non-flickering light at the top. It sounded like it was coming from a room behind the doors. The sound is coming from the last room, be careful. The commander warned. Hee. Oh. The sound is like a little girl crying, I thought, following the captain, or even an adult. It seems that 2 voices of different ages and moods are intertwined. A viscous liquid, the color of resin, appeared from the ceiling in the gaps between the plates. She sank slowly down in viscous drops, and the sounds of laughter continued to resound. Ha ha ha. A couple of drops suddenly dripped onto Yin Shuang's collar, which surprised her greatly. But as soon as she looked up, the black muck became a big tenacious hand reaching out to her, and the sounds filled the space again. Washington ha ha, but the captain is the captain to protect his squad at a dangerous moment. He immediately rushed to the defense of his own fighter, without hesitating for a second. Washington aa. The voice groaned in response to the blow to the hand from the black slime. Be careful and stay calm. Wu Ju spoke while teaching his subordinates. He Washington he sounds filled the space again, and now 2 black hands with crooked fingers were reaching out in their direction. Wow, it looks like one of you got emotional and attracted the attention of this girl. I decided to smarten up the voice of the system in my head, stating this fact. Washington he the voice screamed, then sobbed, then laughed, deafening to some extent. This monster's level is not low at all. The system decided to clarify again. The captain will not be able to defeat him with 1 blow. Why are there so many disgusting hands? Lin was indignant, trying to resist the attacker with a whip. I don't want to play with these tentacles. The clock scale gradually began to grow. Stop talking nonsense. Wang Shai exclaimed, waving his fists to fight back. Let's destroy them as soon as possible. Hooray. Happy with all this, Shang Xiaoyi rejoiced. These toys are mine. Don't touch them. No one was going to. Lin Uzhu was immediately indignant again. Everyone tried to fight in a fairly calm frame of mind, but the scale of all still reached 1 division. The captain's jerk. Washington ha, and now the scarlet stripes from the commander-in-chief's sword cut the air and the tar slush into pieces. Washington the voice of the fallen sobbed again. Act quickly, the captain said coldly, there is no need to play with this. He had the lowest emotion scale. If Lin has 11, Wang Shai has 9, Shang Xiaoyi has 7, and Yin Shuang has 21, then the captain had only 3 displayed on the light blue screen of the clock. Kulu. I stretched out, admiring what I saw, the voice of the system in my head. Your captain is so cool. To which I just kept silent, and the voice continued to sing praises and belittle me. If you were as cool, then there would already be crowds of beauties around you. But I didn't care about the opinion of the voice, and I just yawned in response. Yeah, but it looks like there's no chance. The voice of the system was displeased, and I just walked in silence, listening to him. My emotions were 0 and not a gram more. I'm bored, I want to sleep. Only mentally I thought. Another strip of goo that stretched to one of them was cut again. Die. Yin Shuang exclaimed, swinging her sword, slicing through something over and over again, but it did not run out. Yes, there is no end to them. Wang Shai was indignant, wielding golden brass knuckles with small spikes. It is mine. Shang Xiaoyi was indignant, cutting the black bonds of his hands with his sword. One of the black hands was suddenly grasped by a whip, wrapping itself just above the alleged wrist. This weapon belongs to Lin Wuzhu. That damned rookie by W. Didn't stop protesting Lin, defending himself with a whip from attacking limbs. He glanced at me while I was yawning carelessly. Why wasn't he attacked? My partner's question tormented me. But I just rubbed my eyes sleepily. I want to sleep. I said in response. I think the voice of a little girl affects the mood. Its number is 0. Smeared in black slime, Xiaoyi admired. That's a monster. It's you who call the other a monster. Lin thought, hearing his ally's reaction and seeing his satisfied smile, as if a child had been given a toy that he wanted so much. Well, then, I said, heading down the corridor, since you're busy, I'll go exploring for now. Stop by you. Shouted the commander behind me, and the Scarlet Blade continued to dance further in the dance of struggle. Stop. Don't move. We'll figure it out soon. Wait for us, and we'll all go together. Pity that. I muttered, looking at the ceiling from where the ooze was still oozing, as if from a festering wound. Until your emotional state stabilizes, these tentacles will continue to attack. I'll go and see if I can find the source. Waving away, I said, not straying from my path. Just follow me when you calm down. Would you look dejectedly after me, and the resin-colored liquid was getting bigger and bigger. Captain, where did you find this freak? Still struggling with the tentacles, Wang Shai was indignant. He has a lot of courage. If his mood swings do not exceed single digits, Gu Qinyu began to reason, and a huge piece of viscous slurry flowed from the ceiling. Maybe he's a really brave guy. But if zero? Wu Ju was puzzled. Or something is wrong with the device. He released a bright scarlet flash from the blade towards the clot. Or, the guy thought. There's something wrong with him. The muck was advancing more and more, and soon blocked the visibility of the door through which I went out. I went into the next room, opening the heavy doors of the doors, to which they responded with a resounding creak. There was also devastation in front of me. The chair was overturned and lying on the floor, again a pile of sheets of paper with all sorts of informational text. But, in addition, there is a kind of cage with metal bars, and from somewhere in the center of this structure, a chain with open shackles stretches through the open sash. Apparently someone was chained to the cage by the legs. Wow, look here. The voice of the system in my head immediately exclaimed. I drew attention to this massive structure, because surely it was it that surprised the voice, and not something else. This aviary for dogs is a Jilin, the voice continued the conversation, or rather a monologue. He will perfectly cope with the conclusion of someone. There were pictures of someone's brain on the wall. An all-seeing eye in the form of an ordinary surveillance camera is turned towards the cage. Anyway, the poor thing didn't manage to get out of here. The voice made the decisive result. Until she was released. I sat down in an attempt to examine the mount and study how its integrity was violated in order to understand a little what happened. Washington AAA, the voice that only I hear began to rant again, created to be a dungeon. He is very sorry. The fastening was already in chips and small cracks. It's like it's torn in the middle. Covered with drops of scarlet blood of a living being. It's not small in size, it's a decent size, so to speak, and it's not bad in thickness. This chain is also Jilin. The voice explained again. I took one of the shackles together with the chain in my hands and decided to examine it a little closer. For games with ropes, the voice of the system continued to know, of course, it is too heavy. But if it's a shackle. Ha ha ha. The voice chuckled, as if imagining something. I moved my foot slightly, but suddenly something rolled away from my push. It turned out to be an empty syringe with a long thin needle. Hey. Be careful. The voice of the system immediately exclaimed indignantly. The scattered needles may contain sedatives or other medications. The system immediately launched into explanations. 1 injection will refresh your mind, 2 injections will strengthen your body, 3 injections will rejuvenate. I was immediately electrocuted. I turned my attention to the floor and looked at it from a different angle. There were at least 4 empty syringes lying on it, but who knows, maybe some rolled away. I immediately dropped the shackle and it fell to the floor with a crash. Come on, there's nothing to see here anymore. A voice exclaimed. The documents inside were destroyed, but the owner is not there. The voice of the system did not stop, changing the text on the blue canvases, which only I see, time after time. There were tables against a wall in front of me. On one is a microscope and some other devices for taking tests, on the other is a thick notebook or a book with something, as well as a door leading to another room. Right now, you'd better pay attention to the table in front of you, suggested a voice with so many secret items on it. This is a small composition of our poor thing, which was not destroyed and left to us. One choice. A voice spoke. There was a comb on the table in front of me, a smeared notebook with the inscription diary, and a rusty key with a short blue ribbon at the end of which there was a small knot. Each of the items can give you something from the list. The first is talent. The second is friendship with the poor thing. The third is the hatred of the poor thing. OHH, the voice sighed, don't take it to heart. A second later, I was already reaching for the comb, but the voice opened its mouth again. Think carefully. If you choose one of them, the other two will disappear. I opened the diary and checked, continued my monologue with the voice of the system. There are no dates, and the words benevolence, righteousness and morality are written on each page. My hand hovered over the stained notebook, and my voice was puzzled by the question. Who wrote this diary at all? This archive is filled with details that you and Shorty would like to know. But when the poor thing sees this, the voice of the system said, and my gaze stopped at the rusty key, will she give you hatred, friendship or talent? You have to figure it out for yourself. This key is not the key to the cage, it can open the lock from another place, which may turn out to be a shortcut or an abyss. These tips gave me food for thought, and thoughts immediately began to breed in my head. The archive stores things that may be of interest to me and Wuju. It must have something to do with history, maybe it will help to get closer to the truth. I stood rooted to the spot and still mentally reasoned what was worth taking and what was not. The crest has no clues, which is also noteworthy. The key fits to a door. Maybe there are important clues behind the door. The voice chuckled, it's crazy, after all, I know that you're still a collector. I scratched my head and sighed. Yes. I said on an exhale and immediately smiled. What a nostalgia of a past life. Heh, the voice chuckled again, a friendly reminder, it's like a lottery. I thought about these subjects again, mentally scrolling them in my head from different angles, and the voice began its monologue again. The first ticket seeing the fallen, you will get a new talent. The second ticket you will win the location of the fallen, but the last one. He was interrupted by sounds outside the room. They were heard outside the door I entered. But not for long in silence, the voice of the system continued to slowly push me to choose an action. This is the hatred of the fallen and his persecution until death. Well, I think it's natural to hate people, I think so. The text on the blue information window of the system has changed again. It's over. The captain spoke, finally returning the sword to its scabbard. My indicator has dropped. Wang Shai exclaimed, looking at the screen of his watch. Mine too. Uzu smiled. Let's go. The captain spoke and moved forward to the door. Search for Bai Yu. I need to figure this out. I muttered aloud, thinking about further actions. Well. The voice mumbled uncertainly, as if hinting at what was still going on outside this room, and that there was no time to pull the rubber. Firstly, based on what we have seen, it is safe to say that the two rooms at the end of the corridor are a laboratory. I was thinking, mentally outlining the floor plan. In addition, there should have been a lot of equipment in the laboratory, but everything was destroyed. The test subjects are kept in cages, their every movement is monitored. I continued to reason and analyze the terrain, shifting my gaze from the surveillance camera to the cage. I presented an approximate angle of vision for observation. The course of the experiment. To introduce some reagent and observe the reaction of the subject. This reagent may have something to do with the fallen. I assumed. During this experiment, someone visited the subject. I continued to think, ignoring the external sounds that were heard outside the door. Her thoughts came into contact with the thoughts of another person, but at that time there was no hatred in her yet. Thoughts swarmed in my head, building an approximate picture of what had happened, while I paced the room and tried to notice something else. They were pounding mercilessly on the door, trying to somehow get through to me so that they could be let inside. It was Lin Wuzhu. He indignantly beat on the door with his fist, shouting. Hey Bai Wu. How's the investigation going? Behind him, relaxed, with his hands behind his head, is a still blushing Shan. Wang Shai and the captain were tense. Damn it. Lin exclaimed indignantly. Why the door is still locked? Hey. Bai Yu. While the main part of the squad was dissatisfied with the fact that I did not let them in, Shan only sighed with displeasure, but the smile did not leave his face. This monster has never shown itself to be real, it's boring. And? The system was surprised by my guesses and reflections. The subject was visited and their minds touched. How did you come up with such an idea? I immediately took out the familiar folded worn-out leaf, stained with blood, from the torn diary of a prisoner, and twirled it in the air. Thanks to this note. I said in my mind. That person probably hadn't met her before turning into a fallen, at least the hospital couldn't let these monsters meet. I continued to analyze the collected information, making guesses. I immediately remembered the fallen mosquito from the first floor and imagined if he had a connection with the poor thing. It's true. The voice of the system agreed with me. If I were them, I definitely wouldn't want the test subjects to communicate. But the subject was clearly mentioned in the note. Perhaps she was communicating with someone else, and it was a secret between her and the other subjects. I continued to assume. The monster on the first floor was worried that she would be transferred to the second building. It turns out that she was really transferred. And? The voice of the system was surprised again by my reflections. So her abilities were discovered by the hospital staff? The second building was visible from the window. Or else, cough cough cough. She was passed by one of the other subjects who were in contact with her thoughts. A voice exclaimed, putting forward his guess. Everything is possible. I mentally agreed. From this we can conclude that the fallen in the second core are stronger than in the first. At the very least, there is more hatred and resentment in them. An old building speckled with time with a huge number 2 in a circle. The paint of the white stripes on the building peeled off over time in large chunks, and here and there bald patches were visible, so to speak. One of the air corridors entered the building. Perhaps those gaining some kind of superpower were redirected to the second building. I thought. Little one, are you all? Lin Uzhu did not let up in any way. How long can you sit there? The guy was still indignant, trying in every possible way to open the doors. What's the matter? This door won't open. And this brat doesn't answer. Pulling on the handle and trying to push it, Lin shouted. Captain, he's not going to die there, is he? Uzhu gritted his teeth and, finally releasing the handle, walked a little further away. No matter. I'm going to kick down the door. Suddenly, a premonition struck the captain like lightning. Take care of your legs. Only he managed to exclaim. Suddenly, a thick black liquid immediately appeared from the floor again and reached for the feet of the indignant guy. What? Only the guy managed to say, turning around. The lightning reaction of the captain, and now he has already cut the bonds of an unknown liquid. Captain. Lin exclaimed, turning in their direction. And the black goo continued to ooze further from every corner. The enemy they had once defeated was advancing with renewed vigor. Do not lose your vigilance. The captain warned. It will never end. Lin Uzhu exclaimed indignantly, and their company began to be surrounded by an impenetrable black, like a raven's wing, stream or even a vortex of liquid. Die. Only the exclamation echoed through the floor and drowned in the abyss of struggle. You've sorted out the diary and the key, there's this comb left. The voice of the system summed up the results, and my gaze fell again on a wooden comb stained with blood and with loose teeth. I really have no idea what's wrong with her. We have a sheet of paper with diary entries, a comb that carries unknown information, and a stranger about whom we are trying to find out something. According to the note, it is possible to determine that the subject is a woman, but the question is who will use a comb in such an environment. I was immediately puzzled. Are you sure there is no information about this comb? I immediately asked the system. I'm warning you. A system voice immediately exclaimed. There is no need to doubt my professionalism. The system got angry, and a smiley face of the raised middle finger immediately appeared on the blue canvas of the screen. There is no information about this comb. The system assured me and pointed out a smiley face on the screen with palms spread apart. This gives rise to something to think about. Hairbrush. I thought, looking at the object I was looking for again, and the zeros of the emotional state still appeared on the dial of the watch. 72. So said the dial on Yin Shuang's wrist, who was trying her best to resist the attacks of an unknown shapeless slime. But there can always be a gap in the defense. Another second and the directed tenacious hand would have already harmed the girl if not for Wang Shai. The guy, like a Hulk, grabbed the unknown in his tenacious grip in order to protect his ally. Damn. He was indignant. Why did the level of emotions jump so much? Is the fallen one himself approaching? Wang Shai was surprised. The actions of the fallen were not similar to what had happened before. Now the entity seems to be hurrying to the door in front of them and simultaneously reacts to their surge of emotions so much more aggressively. Hey, did Bai Wu meet the fallen in this room? Lin voiced a question, which immediately began to spin on his tongue. Shang Xiaoyi. Determine where the fallen one is. He shouted instructions to his ally while he was dealing with the aggressive attacks of the monster. Ha 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 ha. Shang Xiaoyi laughed like a madman, pleased with everything that was happening when dealing with the essence. It sucks. Wang Shai exclaimed, defending the rear of his teammates. This guy got into the spirit. I can't hear anything. I'll clear the way for us. The captain of the squad spoke with all seriousness. He bent down slightly, placing his palm on the hilt of his sword and waiting for the essence to flow down to them in a larger mass and head in his direction. Let's save him and leave. The captain spoke without taking his eyes off what was happening. As soon as Wu Ju decided that it was time, he immediately took out his sword from its scabbard. The scarlet lightning followed the sweeping movements of the captain, cutting down the next attacks of the aggressively minded entity. The door handle jerked up and down a couple of times, as if someone was trying to open it from inside the room. Everyone tensed, and the commander barely managed to slow down in front of the doors. The essence immediately melted like snow and did not even think of crawling out of the hidden corners of the room or oozing out of the joints of the ceiling tiles. I silently opened the doors and appeared to the eyes of my partners and the commander. "Excuse me," I said, tapping a couple of times lightly on my shoulder with the edge of the comb that belonged to the poor thing. "Let's go to the 19th floor." "Bai Wu," yelled Lin, walking towards me, quickening his pace. "Little asshole, why are you still alive? If you're alive, why didn't you say anything when we knocked on the door?" Having caught up with me, the guy continued his angry tirade. To which I just smiled as if nothing had ever happened. Shan was surprised, looking around. "By the way, why did this evil thing disappear?" he asked, having lost his toy. "Really inside?" Wang Shai decided to guess. "Is there a fallen one inside?" The horror did not stop, without reducing the volume of the tone. "Did you really deal with him? It can be considered that I have temporarily suppressed the source." I answered quite calmly and, putting my hands in my pockets, headed towards the elevator. "But everything will happen again a little later." The captain just stared after me in silence, as if trying to unravel me, to find the second bottom of such a mysterious person. "Let's go," I said, leading my allies. "There are no more leads here, you need to go up to the 19th floor. Shopping center. Asshole." Lin only chuckled indignantly, but went following everyone. Okay. Wang Shai changed his indignation to joy and said with a smile. "The main thing is that he is whole." Only Shang was dissatisfied with the end of the fight, letting down his hair and thereby closing his eyes. He spoke resentfully. "But I haven't played enough yet." Yin Shuang walked in silence, trying to even out her breathing after the incident and calm down, because the numbers were still on the dial. And these are not zeros that should be, but 2 sticks of the number 11. "Captain, I have a question," I said, and the numbers on the elevator board changed from the 11th to the 12th floor. He didn't take his eyes off me and seemed to want to incinerate me. God, it's as openly visible as ever. Try to hide it. Were all the fallen previously human? I finally asked my question in his direction. I turned around and began to look at him, not taking my eyes off and still not emotionally interested. Is it possible that if we stay outside the tower for a long time, then under certain circumstances we will also become fallen? Silence immediately settled in the elevator cabin. Someone was leaning against the walls of the elevator, someone was just standing on the perimeter, under the spreading light of a scarlet bulb. "Have you studied the clock?" the captain asked coldly, taking his gaze away from me and frowning. "At the value of 75 hours, the alarm begins to sound," the commander explained. "The upper limit is 300. I looked at the dial of my watch and chuckled. Well, it was written in the manual. Pay attention to the color of the dial. Wu Ju spoke. Up to the value of 75, the dial color is green. In the corner of the screen, indeed, the indicator was green, and the dial field was closer to a turquoise shade. After 75 orange. When the value reaches 175, it turns red." The commander continued, and I tried to imagine the screen in these palettes. That's when. Ding dong. The elevator announced a desired floor, thereby interrupting the explanations. The number 19 was displayed on the screen with 2 arrows, one on top of the other, as if they were drawing in kindergarten. The commander remained silent. And then he briefly quit. "Let's go." And began to leave the elevator. Ha ha ha. There was a pleased laugh from the system. "And you're not shy about asking questions at all. Look, everyone ignores you." The barely transparent window was teasing me. "Although Wu Ju didn't finish, I think you've already found out what you wanted." The inscriptions in the window changed, keeping up with the voice of the system in my head. Apparently, if too many negative emotions have accumulated and the scale has reached red values, a person turns into a fallen one. I decided mentally and in agreement with myself, nodded my head a couple of times. This feature was clearly popular. In fact, the voice of the system spoke. When people are furious, they really look like monsters. "The clock perfectly indicates this turning point," she exclaimed and grinned. Ha ha ha. We went out into a room with long tables around its perimeter. They were shifted, and the chairs were randomly placed side by side. The room was plunged into pitch darkness, where the bottom is not visible, only some outlines. All the windows are closed, it's pitch dark. Lin spoke. The windows were indeed boarded up. But why and for what? Wouldn't they have enough windows with metal bars like prison ones? Turn on the light. The captain ordered and lit the watch screen brighter in order to better illuminate the area. Xiaoyi, explore the area. "'K Captain." Shan was muttering, and the corners of his lips were spreading into a satisfied smile. "There are 6 outside the door." Shan continued muttering as the group got closer and closer to the door leading to another room on the floor. 6 fallen. Their level is higher than that of the monster that the captain killed. Xiaoyi was about to say something on a joyful note, already blushing and smiling with might and main, when the captain drowned out his fiery speech with a wave of his hand. "Wait for the order." The captain took his sword out of its scabbard and, slowly advancing, reached the door he was looking for. He touched the surface and tried to open it carefully without making too much noise. Suddenly, 2 scarlet flames lit up in the darkness. After 2 more, silhouettes were somehow discernible. One was bigger and looked somewhat like a silhouette of a robot, the second seemed to have the horns of a deer beetle, but with 1 ear. The second one can be seen lost somewhere. They heard their uninvited guests. "Is the captain always like this?" I asked Wang Shai, trudging with him in the conclusion of the team. "Yeah." The partner answered briefly. "Although I am an advanced man," the guy continued, "but the captain always rushes forward." Silhouettes with a scarlet aura appeared here and there in front of us in the new room opened by the commander. Silhouettes of creatures living on this floor. Something was hanging from the ceiling like a big-eyed drop, someone was standing on the floor on thin paws with 2 seemingly scythes instead of hands, the third was with tentacles, low and also located on the floor, the fourth somehow resembled a child's drawing of a scorpion, the same clumsy and a little funny, the fifth was just the same silhouette, it looked like a robot, but from its belt line, there was a tail like a snake. "But don't worry," Wang Shai continued. The captain pushed off from the surface of the floor and immediately, swinging his blade, rushed into the storm of events on this battlefield. Even if he really meets a fallen one who will be too tough for him. The scarlet flame of the blade danced with the commander every now and then, throwing off scarlet flashes upon contact with the fallen, who were trying to bite off a tasty morsel. "It will still remain intact." My interlocutor spoke. Would you, like the scarlet lightning of his sword, quickly varied between the blows of the fallen and the pieces of concrete that flew in different directions due to the damage inflicted by the fallen. A big man with spikes on his shoulders rushed at him, but even then the nimble commander avoided the blow and he only brought injury to the monster. Wow, that speed. I was amazed by the system, the picture that was in front of my eyes. Does the concomitant force develop different sides for everyone? I asked again. The same, Wang Shai answered my question and crossed his arms over his chest, also watching what was happening. But with each increase, you get additional abilities that enhance your strengths. I can't describe this process. Wang Shai threw his arm over my shoulder and hugged me in a friendly way. You'll understand when you move from the first stage to the second. Of course, it couldn't be simpler. The voice of the system exclaimed. Isn't it the same as the skills in computer games? Would you seems to have pumped up the speed? It finally dawned on her. If we take into account the inflated body of Wang Shai, then, in principle, it immediately becomes clear what kind of path is pumped here. This Wang Shai obviously improves his attack and health. The system voiced not hidden facts. Boring. Lin snorted. Lin Uzhu is a 50-50 attack and speed. The system countered again. Captain. Good luck. Shang Xiaoyi's joyful support rang out. Although the question is being asked here, are you sure you can see behind your hair? Shang Xiaoyi perception and attack. The system continued to analyze. Yin Shuang. The system spoke and seemed to think. I can't say. Strange. I gave up trying to analyze the voice of the system. This girl should be the weakest in the team, but definitely not the characteristics associated with survival. In this team, except for Wang Shai, are all the crazies who have cheap life? The voice of the system was indignant after studying the data. There is no adequacy. You should run from here at all. The captain exhaled, finally ending the showdown with the fallen in this section of the floor. Done. He said, surrounded by the remnants of the bodies of the fallen radiating a scarlet glow. Here lies a hand, a little further away the monster's body, another one even further away, and so everything that was scattered here, as if they were cut into frying, in large chunks in a pool of blood. Let's go. The captain spoke and returned his sword to its scabbard. The fallen of the third level. The text appeared on the blue system plates in blue edging. Mutation. A sickle-shaped hand that can cut through metal. I passed, ignoring the remnants of the fallen, while the system reacted to the results of what happened. These guys will not object to the opening of the Mantis Fist boxing gym. The voice of the system exclaimed. It's a pity that such a good representative of martial arts is now lying here and guarding the hospital. And then the voice launched into some explanations. When they devoured the director, they obeyed only the orders of the poor thing. When we got almost to the door, I looked back, taking in the room with the corpses of the fallen once again. It looks like these 6 were the gatekeepers of the second building. A thought slipped through my mind. Captain, wait. I called out to Wuju, and he immediately jerked to a stop. The fallen of the first core are no match for us. And while we control our emotions, the fallen of the second core cannot feel us. I said out loud my guesses based on analyzing situations. The longer we stay outside the tower, the faster our accompanying power grows. Then why don't we sit in the first building? Huh, so you're quite a teapot? Lin immediately chuckled, hearing stupidity in his opinion. The world outside the tower rejects us. Every 4 hours, interference increases in our body. I decided to explain to the captain the reason why it is better not to do this. Interference? I was interested. The captain pulled the door handle and it creaked open. For example, the speed drops, the senses are dulled, the mood jumps, hallucinations begin, the attack weakens, you resist the fallen worse, you begin to be afraid of light or darkness, and so on. I can't list all the possible options. In addition, every time you leave the tower, you encounter random interference. He headed forward, continuing to lead the squad behind him. A random debuff occurs every 4 hours. I mentally repeated the conclusion from what I had heard. Therefore, it will not be possible to just stand and raise the level. Ha ha ha. The voice of the system grinned. Shorty alone survived in the blue zone for 24 days, which means he received 6 interference every day. He received more than 100 debuffs and was still able to fight the fallen. We moved forward, watching the devastation of this place. TTS, TTS, TTS. The voice of the system clicked. And he's strong. The second tip. The blue system window reappeared. Do not try to slip through the second building, you need to go down to get the key. One by one we disappeared into the darkness of the next room. Otherwise, even after passing the corridor, you will not pass into the third building. A friendly reminder, the system continued to chirp, some incomprehensible crap swallowed the key. In the darkness of the room, 100 eyes suddenly flashed, wandering around the room, as if looking for their victim. Although you can leave purely on the brute force of a shorty, the system decided to give advice. But I suggest you still use a comb. This way you will get more rewards. I was carrying what I was looking for in my bag. It would be pointless to leave her in the same room, having solved only one test. A wide smile showed rows of sharp teeth, and saliva dripped down the chin of a creature with an earthy skin tone and dripped onto the floor. The short scarlet hair stirred because of the creature's movement. Welcome. A creature with wounds along the perimeter of the body screeched, as if the skin was peeling and falling off in pieces, but a new one did not appear in its place. To my arena. A huge spider with a torso and a human head screeched again. He was sitting near the ceiling, stretched out on the strong threads of his snow-white web in anticipation of the feast.